Hello, everyone. Welcome to another OTD AMA or Ask Me Anything. Very impromptu, so I'm not sure if anyone's actually watching right now, but felt like kind of doing one and hanging out, and hopefully some people are out there and have some questions or want to just ask about whatever. I'm open to any questions right now because I want to do this one too because I had some time, but also been thinking about quite a few things in terms of the campaign in Normandy. Right, it doesn't get as much attention this time of year for all kinds of reasons, right? This is still the 80th, but we're not really hearing much about the development of operations inland. At least I'm not. I'm seeing a little bit here and there, but obviously I'm very involved in the history stuff, so I see more than most. And just before jumping on here, I was looking at things related to Operation Spring, which is the push up Verrier Ridge on the 25th, which is coming up this week. 80 years ago today, and things like Goodwood and the major British advance before that, and Operation Atlantic, which is part of that, and is the Canadian part. Sorry, and then also looking at Cobra, Operation Cobra, which is the American, the right hook to Operation Spring's left jab, I guess is a good way to put it. Thinking about it in that sense, right? These are planned together. One's planned to hold, right? Spring is planned to hold and keep the German armor in place around Caen, because that's where most of it is. So if there's no major attacks going on, the German armor divisions can even send elements or whatever, or all of them, which is what they end up doing later with Littich towards the American breakout from Third Army, and then you have Spring, then you have Cobra, which is the swing out, right? It's meant to be the breakout and what starts formulating the Flace pocket. So I've been thinking about those in conjunction, and a couple of things, like I'm not sure how many out there watched it, but I was on Paul Wittich's channel, World War II TV, last week, talking about Carpiquet, so Operation Windsor, which took place on July 4th, 5th, 1944. It gets some confusion around that one. It's, why did it happen? It's only a few days before Goodwood, so why not just push through there at the same time and everything like that? And Dave Patterson, who's a retired Canadian general who served in Afghanistan and historian, battlefield tour guide, and all-around great person, wrote an article about this on how Windsor was done to support Operation Jupiter, which was planned for after Goodwood, or roughly around the same time. Goodwood didn't go as planned. So why I've been kind of thinking about Cobra again, and a lot of you know those, if anyone is out there watching, some of the issues with the channel and trying to get things going well and trying to up the audience and things like that. I've been trying to think about ways to, get more eyeballs and more topics and things like that. So trying to, take Dave's lesson to heart in that article that he wrote about Windsor and trying to understand the bigger picture, right? And Canada, and I'm guilty of this again myself, is we tend to be very much in silos with the blinders on, not looking at the bigger picture. We tend to focus on the Canadian actions, which are usually only a couple divisions at a time, 3 max in Normandy, especially, without kind of looking at the bigger picture and where these pieces fit in. So trying to understand it overall and trying to get all that in. I mean, not to say that I don't know, because I've looked at the American operations, the British operations, Goodwood especially. I'm trying to do more on Cobra. That was one of my original plans when going to Normandy, was going to go to the area where the offensive started, because a lot of people go to the later areas where, Third Army is really starting to do its breakout, the whole Patton thing, and down in that area closer to the coast. I wanted to go to the area where the bombings took place, right? Because there's a lot of similarities between what happens with Cobra, with what happens with Totalize, which doesn't happen until the 8th of August, 7th, 8th August, overnight, where they do the bombing. Whereas the Cobra bombing is far more successful than what happens in Totalize, which misses the targets and then causes quite a bit of friendly fire. So there's a bit of that too. So I'm trying to understand, why that one went well, whereas Totalize works, but why did it have so many issues? Why wasn't, the breakout as successful? and all of that thing. I mean, German armor plays a large role in that. I think terrain plays a role in that. So that's something I'd like to understand better myself, is trying to understand all of that. Why one works in one area and then doesn't work in another. Especially when it's, a different type of army, a different type of doctrine, particularly when it comes to armor, because I think these things also have implications for understanding what I do in modern military history, but also for today. And I mean, Goodwood's been looked at for decades in terms of its impact on Cold War doctrine. Maybe that one gets discussed a little bit. I mean, the Allies, or what becomes NATO and all of that, thought that they could learn how to stop Soviet attacks, so Soviet armor, because the Soviets had, again, I'm not too sure about the numbers off the top of my head, but the Soviets had an advantage in terms of armor and just overall numbers with infantry and all that stuff, pure numbers overall. How they could stop an armored thrust, just like the Germans did with Goodwood. I mean, I've looked at some of the smaller things that happened that went wrong with Goodwood. I think some of the planning was very poor, so that helps the Germans to stop it. Again, it's, I think, a much smaller scale than anything that, the Soviets would have, launched to, say, kick off the Cold War and becoming hot. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one to look at in terms of its impact overall, especially because Goodwood's been looked at, and there's been things where people have recently been claiming in all kinds of arenas that, the SS weren't talked to, or these people weren't talked to because of the war crimes and all that, and their information or their knowledge wasn't taken advantage of, which is just completely untrue. Some of these SS leaders, some of these German military leaders were on staff rides, so that's battlefield tours for those in the military, basically, where you go to the spot and be like, well, what would you do? What would you do here, knowing what you know, or based on the ground, like how would you have launched this offensive, or how do you do this defense, or if they break it down even to smaller levels, like you're in charge of this battalion, what are you going to do there, that kind of thing. So that's not true, and I think that kind of misses a lot of information. It's ahistorical, and it's weird to me because this is very well documented. Anyway, so if anyone has any questions, I'm not sure who's here. Hi, James. Thanks for showing up, and you're a great support of the channel. Much appreciated. First one to comment, so if you want anything answered, now's the time. I'm more than happy to talk for a little bit. If anyone else pops in, that'd be great. Because, yeah, I feel like hanging out, I feel like talking some history, because I've done AMA in a bit. So I'll see if Impromptu even works. I don't know if it'll work or if I have to schedule one in advance. I'm not sure. So this is kind of a test as well, because I want to do some experimenting to see what I can do, because I need to see if I can get this thing to have a long-term sort of legs to it. So this is a kind of a test. But yeah, so that's just kind of what I've been up to. Some other projects I'm working on for other organizations. I've been doing some stuff with the Canadian War Museum, looking at some very specialized armor from the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers on D-Day. Very interesting piece of kit, a Sherman that's been adapted to work in deep water. It's a funky looking thing. It's got, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's got the chassis of the Sherman and all of that, and everything's been welded into place on top and all of that. So maybe I can share a bit about that later, because I'm trying to get in the nitty gritty and understand the details, because that's what the Canadian War Museum has asked me to do. And there's quite a few interesting stories with this thing and the effectiveness of it, and it possibly, as far as I can tell, was used to cross the Rhine as well, and needed to be used to cross the Rhine. That is an interesting one too, because you don't tend to think of D-Day and crossing the Rhine with plunder and all of that being one and connected in a lot of ways, but they were. I mean, the Rhine was a bit of a different ball game. They used the duplex drive tanks and things like that. So it's an interesting one, and maybe I can do something with it. I mean, it's very nitty gritty and very technical, which isn't usually my bread and butter, but I'm happy to do it. So James, have your plans changed or been modified? Things we're looking rather tenuous recently. Not overall. Trying to do a little bit more in terms of just thinking overall. Not trying to do anything rash. That's what I don't want to do. One thing I have been batting around, and I think it is a necessity to keep things running, is try to broaden what I look at. And and all that stuff. Not a lot of people know, but I mean, because I've been gaining a lot more followers in the last little bit, so like last 6 months or something, is my first, kind of foray into, and this is going somewhere, this isn't just rambling, into academic history was American history, actually. My start was in the War in the Pacific. And from the beginning, I started looking at Pearl Harbor and what that meant, the initial reactions to Pearl Harbor. Because, as a kid, you watch a lot of, if you're interested in history, right, you read the, hurts to say it now, but like the Stephen Ambrose type books and the documentaries, and you always hear the vets saying, I enlisted after Pearl Harbor, I enlisted on the 7th, I enlisted as soon as I heard, and all that stuff. And I thought, okay, that's interesting, but like, because you hear that from the First World War and all that stuff, the war is declared, and apparently there's huge lines to enlist. So I thought, okay, what does that actually mean? Looking at it academically and things like that, and then the project morphed into what Pearl Harbor did to Hawaii overall, right? Because Hawaii wasn't a state, there was no plans for statehood at the time. So I really kind of looked at that and overall and how the war in the Pacific really affected Hawaii, which was fascinating because it's so many layers and things like that. So I'd like to kind of do a little bit more of that. I know there's some excellent channels out there and some people doing some great stuff, public history wise and otherwise, academic history as well. There's a lot of great stuff on the Pacific. But there's tons that, interest me. So I'm hoping to maybe get some people who can talk about things, especially some anniversaries that might be coming up if I can get them to come on. I mean, Paleo Lou's coming up. That's a fascinating one to me. Always has been for, I don't even know how long now, over 15 years or something like that. I've been fascinated in that one. Haven't been doing as much with it as I'd like recently because I found some amazing footage. I mean, the stuff is visceral. You think you know about the Pacific and stuff like that and the brutality of it. And some of this stuff is captured on film and is available for you to look at on the internet. It's absolutely wild. But yeah, so I mean, batting that around, maybe I'll send some emails in the coming days to some people because I don't have the credibility for that, right, to do it on my own. But some people do. I can kind of touch base with them and see if they're willing to come on and talk about it. I mean, it's a part that I've not done much on. I wish I had. As to let you know, I did my PhD in Hong Kong, so I've looked at the Pacific of the early days, right, or past those anniversaries for the 80th anyway. So looking at the early days is also fascinating, and what goes on in places like Guam and how things kick off in Malaya and all that other stuff. There's tons of fascinating topics out there that don't get a ton of attention. So that's another one I kind of want to focus on, is maybe doing some more of those with some live streams and have people come on who are experts and talk about that and kind of give that some coverage. I mean, Woody's done a fantastic job as well, obviously, with World War II TV and getting better and he's getting more and more support all the time, which it 100% deserves. But also maybe looking at some other stuff. I don't know, maybe like some more World War I topics, really branching out from those I've already done. I mean, there's all kinds of fascinating campaigns that I haven't looked at all. You have what's going on in Italy in the, 12 or 11 something battles of the Isonzo River, which is wild to think about. Things going on with the Eastern Front and all of that, and also the Eastern Front in Second World War, which is one I haven't touched much on. So I don't know. I'm thinking about maybe trying to do something else and maybe be the place where, the stories that don't get a ton of attention, right, have a place to come and to see if, people will be interested in that. I mean, because I try to do that with my own work in a lot of ways, is looking at, some primary docs that I've found in the past, right? I did that video on Omaha from a major who I've never seen him used in anything. And he lands right where the 29th and the 1st U.S. divisions are coming ashore. And that part of the beach is just some of the worst. I mean, I can't remember who it was. I'm going to have to go back and check. But after I put that video out around D-Day, the anniversary, someone said Saving Private Ryan isn't even as bad as it was. And people are like, Saving Private Ryan is realistic and, the visceral nature of the fighting and blah, blah, blah. And this guy, Stanley Bach, regards much worse than Saving Private Ryan showed. So I mean, that's kind of the thinking is maybe, shift to some lesser known stuff to get, people always talk about, they want to see this, that, and other thing. And some of the bigger channels won't touch it because it can't get the viewership that they need to keep things running from the, money perspective and things like that. So maybe that's a niche I could fill. I don't know. I have some thinking to do about that because I got some projects on the go right now otherwise. But yeah, I mean, it's something I'm batting around. And if people are interested in that, please let me know. Or if you know anybody else who's out there or has a book they're working on or has come out in the recent past or coming up, I'm willing to be that place where people can come and talk about it. I don't have a geographic limitation. I don't have a time period limitation. Obviously, I do modern because that's what I know the best. So that's just what I focused on. And those are the people I know from my own work and networking and my own work experiences and things like that. But always happy to do something else and other suggestions as well. Maybe I'll do a community post after this because I have a lot of subscribers. I mean, not as much as some others, but it's pretty good. So maybe I can generate some ideas and some things like that. And because I've had some great ones in the past from some subscribers and viewers of what to look at. And it was, like the Canadian regiment that fought for the Americans during the Revolution, which is just something you don't think about. And it's such a fascinating story. And we did a live stream on that with an author of the book. So yeah, so things like that. I've had some people reach out to me via email, possibly some different avenues of how they look at history and how they go about that. So I've been giving that some thought and then maybe have them on looking at some different time periods as well, more like recent Cold War stuff, which is a topic I admit, any other, stories that I don't know as well, or I've heard a little bit, stuff like that. So, I mean, I haven't kind of gone down any of those avenues, but I definitely will see if I can do more with that because I have people reaching out. So it's just, again, I'm percolating a lot of ideas because I'll have to get them running in motion soon if I'm going to do anything because I'm just running out of time for a deadline I've set for myself of September. And I know a lot of people are going to say, don't do that and don't do that and don't set a hard deadline. But it's just, I have to shift what I devote time to, right? So there's a few other things I'm waiting for that might help. So we'll see if that comes up as well. But we'll see. I'm still waiting on some information related to that. So that may help a lot as well. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of untapped Canadian content out there. A lot of stories. A lot of people are doing some interesting work. So I do. So that's the thing. I've been, like I just said, I've been thinking about how to go about this and what works and what doesn't. And I do love providing a platform for other people. I mean, it's not as big as others, but in terms of a Canadian platform, there's not much. A lot of people don't do a lot of live streams with other people, or they do, with people they know and things like that. And I'm not being, saying that's bad. It's just how they do it. And I try to do kind of like what he does and some other channels do of having new people on all the time and trying to cover as many stories. So maybe we'll see. If that is something people want, please let me know. I would love to see some ideas or, some even just general support for that and maybe get some of those on. But there's some ideas I've had and I'll see if they're practical. Stay tuned for that. Maybe I'll give that a think. I think a new way of looking at it will be an interesting way of doing it. I have an idea, but I don't want to say because I don't want to promise anything anymore. I don't want to promise anything anymore when it comes to the channel because that's just not how that's going to work anymore. So, because I can't. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. There is some good topics out there. There's some really interesting work being done and some areas that have been put down more or less by the field, which I don't think is fair. New ways of looking at things is always helpful. And some people just want the old school, battle history. This arrow went this way. And that's fine for them, but that's not what I'm trying to do. Yeah, so yes. And then Period Cop, I have considered it. He has done a lot for the field. He's always got something on the go. He still does a lot of work. I don't think he's ever done anything like this. Does talks, and like I was at one at the conference I went to back in the beginning of May. He did a talk, connecting air power to Normandy because it was the 100th of the Royal Canadian Air Force, and obviously the 80th of the landings was coming up. So he talked a bit about that and how air power played in interesting ways in the days following the landings, especially with things like POWs and how that kind of went. And right, because the Allied air dominance had an effect that people don't often think about is strafing POWs. That happened quite frequently, actually, because you just don't know. Things aren't marked. It's strafing of patrols and things like that. So you don't know who's who. So that happened quite frequently, actually, especially in the days following. But it's a fascinating one. So I don't know. I don't know if he's doing these kinds of things. He does obviously stuff still with the Laurier Center as Canadian. It changed its name 2 years ago now. They focus on Canadian history, generally speaking. Not really sure what the relationship is there, but it's something I can think about, and I'm not too sure. I know some people who I can ask who could probably give me some insight on whether or not that's a good idea to even ask. Nothing I've heard. I reached out to them a while ago, never heard anything. So sorry, this is the Royal Winnipeg Regiment documentary. So a group in France, I'm not sure who or how it came about, decided to get together and tell the story of the Winnipeg's landing on D-Day and then the push inland. I haven't seen it myself. I think Woody saw it. Some other people have seen it. It was showed at the Juno Beach Center, I think. It was shown a bunch of places across Normandy, which is cool. I haven't seen it myself. Don't know much about it. Little bits and pieces, like I saw stills and some stuff like that. But yeah, it looks fascinating. I mean, I did a video on the Winnipeg's landing on Juno Beach and how tough their sector was. I mean, it's still there. I mean, the concrete defenses in place were intense of what they had to face against with their landing. So obviously that makes for a good story. And I'm not sure if it's getting a North American release. Don't know. I can try again. I don't know if the way I reach out is how they do stuff, but I can try again. I couldn't find any other ways to reach out, and other than through social media, which I tried and didn't go really anywhere. But it does look interesting. I do think it should be a good one. I want to keep an open mind. If it does come out, I don't know what the plans are though. But it's glad that a Canadian story is getting that treatment. I mean, we've had that documentary. I think it's on Amazon here in Canada. I'm not sure about other jurisdictions, but looking at I think it's just overall on D-Day. It's like a docudrama almost, I think. I've never seen it. Again, someone asked me about that previously, I think during the AMA after I got back from Normandy, about if I'd ever seen it or my thoughts or whatever. And I never do. You know, if I'm going to go watch it and something comes up, and it just never seems to happen. It's not because I don't think it's good or bad or anything like that. It just, every time I go to watch it, I don't, for whatever reason. So maybe it should be something I check out. Yeah, I can't cover everything, and I don't plan to. Sorry, I'm a little thirsty there. I never planned to cover everything. Storming Juno, that's the one that's out. Sorry, I'll get back to you, Great Dominion, in a sec. Storming Juno, that's the one that's already out, and it's on Amazon. And looks like it has this promising moments. I've seen like bits and pieces, and it looks like it's fairly well done. I mean, you can only do so much. You can't really recreate the landings as how they actually looked, because that would be rated whatever it is, NC-17 and X or whatever, and never see the light of day. But yeah. I don't have time to do everything I want. And I like providing a platform for people because it connects people, and people get to learn stuff they may never have got to, or they, even for whatever it is, the hour and a half that we're talking about it, maybe that's their only exposure to it, but they'll have it in their mind maybe at some point. And I don't know, maybe they go somewhere on a vacation and they're like, oh, I remember this, or this rings a bell, or why do I know this? I don't know. I think that's something I'm trying to do a little bit more of, is kind of give a value in that way of looking at things, and maybe even in the most tangential way of having an impact on how history is presented and remembered. I don't know. That's something new I'm also thinking about, of what my aims are and everything like that. So yeah, it's not something I ever plan to do, but yeah. I mean, it creates a catalog very quickly. It gets good information out there. It's just good for everybody. And then Woody's the pro at it, and he's been doing that for a long time now. He has no plans to stop it anytime soon, nor should he, because he'll never finish talking about that war. Sorry, I know you didn't ask about this, but I just hear this a lot, especially recently, is we're going to run out of World War II stories. And I'm just like, no, that's never going to happen. I don't see how, but people are still talking about ancient Rome and ancient Greece and things like that. So I don't see us coming out of any of that anytime soon. That's right. Yeah, Jim Park. So he was a veteran who landed with, I can't remember which company, D, maybe? E, maybe? I think he was one of the first. Well, it's either one of those two, because those are the ones that come ashore first. He's one of them. So he lived through all of that and then push inland and then all the way through the war. Yeah, I haven't met him directly. I said like hello very briefly last May or April. No, it was May, because it was just before Liberation Day in the Netherlands, which is a crazy party, by the way. Even when it's pouring rain, which it was, they still party. The Dutch are very reserved in a lot of ways, generally speaking, but on that party day, they let loose. Anyway, I just said, very briefly, hi, and he was there then, and he was at Holten, a cemetery that doesn't get tons of attention in the Netherlands, because there was a big ceremony there. It was actually extremely well attended by locals, which was great to see. Anyway, neither here nor there. But and Jim Parks is always apparently willing to tell and talk to people and listen to people too, which is fantastic. Yeah, and this is the other one. Little Black Devil. So yeah, it's using the nickname of the Winnipegs. Sometimes I use them interchangeably. Sorry, I keep popping around. Yeah, I think it's 2010 or 2009-ish. Something like that. But yeah, that's the one. Storming Juno is older and all that good stuff. But this is the new one. So Little Black Devils from Juno to Puto, which I haven't got to yet on my own channel, because Puto, they get hit again. And that's 2 days. So that's the 8th. So that's June 8th. They take a wallop again, because that's the 25th Panzer Grenadier Regiment of the 12th SS. That's their first major counterattack is then. And they get pushed out of Puto with a high number of casualties. They have to get supported by the Canadian Scottish Regiment, which is in reserve. So that it's a crazy battle, and then the Can Scots push them, the 12th SS, back out of Puto, and they hold the line. So it's another seesaw battle. There's a lot of those in Normandy for the Canadians, so many. But it's a fascinating story. I'm glad someone's covering it. So that's 2-3 days of the fighting. Maybe it'll go into the 9th when things kind of stabilize again. I'm not sure. Again, I don't know. I don't know the details. But so we were talking about, James here, 2. So there's an older one called Storming Juno, which I think looks at all of them, all the beaches, I think. Again, I've never seen it. So that's, all the way from St. Alban to all the way across to west of Corsoles, there where the Can Scots come ashore, I think. So, covering just the 6th, whereas this one is a different titled one that just came out, like D-Day, anniversary of D-Day last month. It's covering just the Royal Winnipeg Rifles. Which are nicknamed the Little Black Devils. And it's Hold the Oak Line, which is who I've never met. Frederick Deneen's book. Yeah, he sadly passed away last year, which sent a few shockwaves through the community because a lot of people knew him. It's not my story to tell, but lots of people knew him because of his work in Normandy and Hold the Oak Line, which I didn't buy when I was there, which was stupid, which I should have done. Didn't even come to mind to do, which is just stupid of me, but I should have done that, but I didn't. I don't know why. I'm just focused on my own thing, I guess. Anyway, yeah, so it covers exactly that, because that is what the Oak Line is, right? That's the fighting at Puteaux and at Bretteville and all that good stuff, right? Where the attacks come from the direction of the Abbaye, where the murders take place. That's all happening at the same time. So that's basically from the 7th to the 10th-ish, because then they try to push again forward with the attack into La Maison-Patrie, which does not go well, right, with the Queen Zone and the First Hussars. And that's their like offensive action, and that's basically the last until a few probing things here and there, but nothing really until Windsor on the 4th, 5th of July, because they're trying to build up and get back to strength. And it works, right? It's a grinding campaign, but it definitely worked. CBC, I don't think so. I know it's on the Amazon here, but I can't say that for any other jurisdiction, UK, US. No idea. Don't have it. But yeah, I know in Canada, so that Storming Juno, the one that's from whatever, 2010, 09, whatever it is on Amazon. It was when I last checked it, I think about a month ago. I don't know if it still is. I can't speak to that. Yeah, it's like the two. There's not much else. There's a few heritage minutes. I've talked about those before. Looking at like, I think it was, can't remember. Maybe it was the Queen Zone. I don't know. They did a heritage minute on the Queen Zone, and then they did one on the North Shore with Jim McNaughton, who's fought in the First World War. And then volunteers to go again with those from the North Shore of New Brunswick, because that's what the name comes from. And then is killed on D-Day in I should know the name of the village, and it escapes me at the moment. It's just inland. Mark Milner talks about it in his book, which is around to me somewhere, from D-Day to Carpiquet, about the North Shore Regiment, which is fantastic. But he talks about it there. Jeez, the name's gonna drive me crazy. Anyway, it's just inland. There's a memorial there to the North Shore Regiment. But so there's not much like fictionized covering of Canada's early days in Normandy. So it's great to see. Oh, it's on CBC. I don't know. I honestly have no idea. Not a clue. No clue. Hi, Sheila. There's a question. How's it going? Well, the weekend's been good. Been working, but I went out for dinner last night, which was nice. We've had some nice weather here, so that is fantastic. So awesome. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, I tout that book as much as I can. My copy is literally usually within arm's reach, because I'm still not done. It's upside down. Sorry. I took the dust jacket off because they drive me crazy. It's literally within arm's reach of me pretty much all the time on my desk, because I'm still not done Bretteville and I'm still not done Puteaux. So that's why it's right there. That's why I keep it nearby, because it doesn't go past La Maison-Patrie, which is the 11th, I believe. It just tangentially mentions it. It's a great book. Everyone should read it. Anyone, really. And I keep saying this. It's not just a Canadian book. It's actually done through an American university press, which is crazy, because that's the University of Nebraska. So who does that in this day and age, right? It's important because it understands the Canadian role, why the advance happens the way it does, or doesn't happen the way it does. And a lot of people have these assumptions and all that kind of stuff. And they don't look at the maps. They don't listen to people like me, because this isn't just me. This has been going on for decades. Like Mark, who's been talking about this well before Stop of the Panzers came out back in 2018, 2017, something like that. It hasn't been out that long. 2014, so even longer. Yeah, I reviewed it in like 2016 or 2017 because it hadn't been done yet in Canada, which is for the academic press of Canadian military history, which is weird. So it understands, what 3rd Division's role is, why they are landed where they are, why Normandy develops the way it does, why the planning goes the way it does. It really brings it all together, and I think because it's Canadian, quote unquote, people don't look at it other than really intense scholars and things like that. And it's an academic press, so that has all of the associated issues. But yeah, it's fantastic, and everyone should check it out. And the maps are done by Mike Bechtold, who's fantastic. And he's done maps for me, been on the channel all around. Also, great guy. So yeah, it's a fantastic book that really should get more attention than it did, or still isn't getting. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Trying to do what I can. Trying to cover some things. Was looking at Operation Spring this morning / Goodwood / Totalize, because they all take place in the same area. Also doesn't get talked about too much, but yeah, so I've been looking at some of that stuff. I'm waiting for a few things, and then I can finish the latest video on that. But I had the video about the Black Watch out yesterday, their spot of spring specifically, and a little bit also where the Calgary Highlanders advanced up to a point. Again, it's hard to explain without really getting into the nitty gritty, but thank you. Thank you, James. Nobody watches CBC anymore. I don't even watch cable anymore. So, yeah. Sorry, what do you mean, Billy? Billy Ray here. Chip in. Maybe they would. Sorry, I don't know what you mean, but Will Frey's Armor Battles of the Waffen SS. The Normandy part is incredible from turret perspective. Okay. X-Tankard is all too rare. Interesting. I don't know that one. I've heard the name before. Sorry, of Will Fay. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. I assume that covers, as you said, the Normandy part. So I assume that's all the war. So maybe in the East and, you know, all that good stuff too. I don't know. I'll look it up probably when we're done. But I just know there's been some issues. I'm not saying this one. I just get a little, not back up, but I can't stop the academic in me sometimes. I go, oh, because some of the, you know, these accounts that supposedly these German books are based off don't exist, or they're made up. They're completely made up, falsified, or whatever. So, I mean, I'd be interested to look into it more. Trying to do more from the German perspective as well. It's not the easiest thing to do because of the reason I just explained, but also there's the language issue. Even though there's great translators nowadays online and all kinds of great apps, but also just accessibility thing, right? A lot of this stuff is destroyed at certain points, headquarters overrun, that kind of thing. A huge number of people were killed, later operations especially those facing the Canadians. 12th SS take a walloping more than once, and a lot of those who were involved in this fighting, I mean, a lot of them should have been trial for war crimes. That didn't happen, but a lot of them die, and then the stuff gets down. And the official history of the division is full of problems, so many problems. So I have some issue with that, and there's also some stuff, the first SS, some of it that is good. I looked into some of that because they face the Canadians too as well, right? Same with the 9th. So that's another area to do some poking around in, but it's an area fraught with all kinds of issues. Yeah, it's an interesting side of things to look at, and obviously an important part of the story that has more complexities on it and more issues and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's a fascinating part of World War II. This, you know, the attention it gets nowadays, especially still, there's always books on the SS coming out, new books, doesn't stop. It's an interesting one. Mike, I see your question. I'll give it there in a second. Just want to say thank you to James. I appreciate that. Any support you have is fantastic. Thank you. So funny you mentioned that, Mike. I did a live stream on that exact thing. Those two books. I have one of them right here. I was looking at it yesterday because I was looking for maps. Ignore the noises. That's just books falling. So I had this one literally right next to me. It's been on my desk for months. You know, this one's looking at the beginning. So Atlantic, so pushing past Con into the 22nd, and then looking at I think it goes all the way to the 27th. It doesn't go to totalize. I think it's when the reinforcement moves west for Littich that hits the Americans, or tries to hit the Americans. I think that's when it stops. Anyway, I talk about this at length. To be honest and blunt, I'm not a fan. I'm not against the author. I don't know him personally. I've been at conferences with him, said hello vaguely a couple of times, but I didn't like the way the book was done. And you can go see that afterwards if you want to check that out. You just put it in on my channel. But it's I'm not a fan of it, how it was done and what it kind of perpetuates and things like that. Sorry, just reading a comment here from Peter. I rented a house from Radley Walters himself when I lived in Petawawa. He told me the influence about my parents' story. Wow. Okay. That's a fascinating story. I've been there too myself. I went there. I went there multiple times while I was there last. I went to the ground twice. Because what's interesting, this is a fodder for all kinds of people, right? It's used as, to make him a martyr, and other people just like telling the story of tanks clashing, that kind of thing. It's well memorialized on the ground itself. There's plaques all over the place. What's interesting, and I'm not sure when you went, Peter, but when I went, one thing I found about trying to understand all of this by looking at the ground, it's kind of unchanged in the spot where the Brits are coming from. So that's the is it Northamptonshire Yeomanry? Could be wrong. It's one of the Yeomanry armored units. I think it's Northamptonshire. With the famous Joeykins and things like that. Okay, so you didn't go that long ago. So one of the things I found difficult is trying to get the Canadian side of things. Because you can go around, this road kind of does like a big loop, kind of isolating that part of the battlefield. So you can see it all from their perspective. I didn't go into the woods where they kind of are, but you can get a good idea. You can come all the way around. You can see it from multiple perspectives. Canadian side, the Conflays Highway of the time, which was just like a 2-lane road, is now a 4-lane or more. I think it's a 4, doesn't matter, 110 kilometer plus highway. So the Canadian side is literally on the other side of that highway. So where the Canadians are, or at the time, is this tiny little village, tiny little place. Still is tiny today. There's a road that literally leads up to where the highway is. But what the problem is there's bushes. So you can't see anything unless, which happens to be there at the time I was there, a dirt pile. So I climbed up this dirt pile and tried to get the best view. So some of it's still blocked. You can't see too much. Like you can't take the sight line that they would have had at the time, because it's all these trees and everything are blocking it. And I don't blame people who live there, because there's a 4-lane highway right next to them that's super loud. And that was the problem I had is I went up to this thing, and I think people thought maybe I was a cop or something. Like they're just laying on the horn at me. Yelling at me, screaming at me, all this kind of crazy stuff. So it was hard to get that perspective. I will do a video on it at some point. I doubt it'll be out for the 8th because I am so far behind. But it's a fascinating look at things, and maybe I'll talk about that too, where ground changes and how we can understand it is different than the day, because people have done these quote unquote forensic investigations on how things they have an angle usually of how they want it to be, of who killed who. Right? You see it with the Red Baron, you see it with Whitman and others. So they usually have the evidence of the ground today, which in a lot of cases means nothing. And this is one where it has changed. So it's a fascinating story. But it's something I will be talking about in the future. And again, obviously, a lot of I'm no fan of Whitman. I think his thing is overdone because of propaganda and all that stuff. And it didn't even matter who took him out, to be honest, because he was gone. And even that he was gone, to me, it's another tiger off the battlefield. So more than one, actually. So that was more important than killing Whitman. Are you familiar with the relatively new video game called The Troop? It looks very promising and focuses on British and Canadian Army. No, interesting. Is it an Arbor perspective, just based on the title, The Troop? I think that's cool. No, I don't play video games. Not against it or anything. Oh, Peter, I'm going to come back to that in a second. your comment you just posted, but I just want to answer a great Dominion's question here. No, I don't really play video games. Again, not disparaging anybody. I just don't have time for much things like that, or for anything other than work, to be honest. I'm always trying to do something. Oh, okay. This video game, I used to be a gamer. I don't like call myself like a hardcore gamer, but I used to play like the new I know it's going to make some people cringe, but the new Call of Duty games, and I used to do a lot of real-time strategy games and things like that. I used to be a big fan of those long time ago. Yeah, but I just not recently, and I don't have the tech to do these kinds of good new games, especially PC. Yeah, it's something I want to like get into, because obviously I think it's interesting to do these things, but how people learn about it, and because a lot of people are going to come to this through video games, and that's great, because any way coming to this stuff is fantastic. People, used to learn from comic books and movies like Longest Day and Bridge Too Far, and my generation was Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be games that are going to be the thing that you're going to hear historians and, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years be like, because of this video game or that video game or whatever. So yeah, it's fascinating, and I'm glad to hear it doesn't require a high-end computer, because mine's not terrible, but it's not meant for gaming. It's meant for just it basically taps out at the high level of, it's high level is what I do with the basics of editing. So, but I'll check it out too, along with the book that was also brought up. I have a question for you, Peter, if you're still here. What do you mean stuck a flag, a Canadian flag at Lacombe? Because I've been there twice now. Different opinions both times. I talked about this for a post for my patrons and YouTube channel members, of kind of going the second time in a very different opinion on this place, and different feelings and things like that. And that's kind of stuff I want to keep for the patrons for just all kinds of reasons. Don't really want that too public, because some people probably take it the wrong way. But it was a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, not at particularly really anyone in particular, but, all this death for no reason, and why this cemeteries have to exist in the first place. And anyway, so yeah, small Canadian flag. Oh, I wonder, is that just like a respect for a fallen enemy kind of thing? Because, I mean, Radley Walters is extremely well known. He was interviewed about this lots of times, and lots of his exploits and things like that. So he had to have known of Whitman's reputation otherwise, other than on the battlefield. But interesting. Okay, yeah. So I mean, I can't judge that at all, because that's not my position to do. I can judge historians and people who were born after the fact, but not those who were there. I will never do that. I just wanted to know. So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I hit the wrong one there. But for Mike, yeah, I mean, it is wide open terrain, and I tried to capture that as best as possible for this area of Total Eyes that comes through, because that's where the Conflace Highway, like I said, it continues on past that stuff. I mean, because that's where Bretteville, Surlay's War Cemetery is located, just off of that. It's actually it's like 2 minutes away from where Whitman was taken out, and all of those monuments and things like that. They're all over the place. They got footage and photos of everything around there. Also, the Polish cemetery is nearby, which is another one that's also heartbreaking for more than one reason, of the whole story of that, which I can maybe do a video on or talk about it another time. But I spent a long time there as well, because my wife's family is Polish. So I wanted to pay my proper respects there as well. But this area is not as well visited as some other spots, and it's easily accessible because of the highway. Yeah, it's wide open, and that's why the highway is still there. That's why that road was there in the first place, and it's into fillets, which is interesting area to go into itself, because I found fillets very difficult to get into traffic-wise, because it's a cliff. Fillets means cliff, so. Which is interesting, because I was talking to some people. I don't think they'd ever heard of the town of Fillets while I was at the Hill 262 Memorial, or maybe I mispronounced it or something. And they're like, Fillets, they mean cliff? I'm like, no, the town of Fillets. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah. anyway, so that whole corridor is fascinating. And then I did a whole bunch of stuff on the Gap, but that will be coming in time. Maybe. Interesting. I don't know. I can look into that. Maybe. That sounds vaguely familiar. Or am I thinking of somebody else? Interesting. I'm going to look into that. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't want to say one way or the other. It sounds like it could be something that happened. I mean, the War Diary survives, but that can be rewritten and done later. But yeah, it's interesting. Interesting way of thinking about this too, of why we tell the way stories do, because what documents were destroyed and when. That's a big one. Okay. Yeah, Bretville is an interesting tiny little town. Not even, I shouldn't even say tiny because it's not anymore. At the time it was just kind of that strip along that road that connected Caen and Bayeux in the west. It's kind of like it's sprawled like crazy now. It's fascinating to see these places grow and then have new ideas of where places to stay. I stayed in, I don't know, Peter, how long you've been following the channel, but I was in Courseulles-sur-Mer, so right on the beach for my entire trip there, which I now regret doing at the tail end of driving from Falaise and the Gap back three times back all the way to the beach. I mean, it was a lovely place to stay though, especially off season. Fantastic. Anyway, so yeah, I was cursing myself for not staying in Falaise or something. But always good to know other places to stay if I can ever get back there, which I'd love to do. I mean, I'd go to Normandy every year if it was possible, but I've only been twice, most recently in April. I just really enjoy going to Normandy. Great place. I mean, it's fantastic. As I get older, I get tired of bigger cities. I still want a little bit because I want some certain things, certain services and ease of certain things. But also, it's not that far from Paris to begin with. But yeah, it's fantastic. I loved it. I'm not usually the biggest small town fan either, like medium cities, but some of those tiny little towns look pretty cool. And I mean, obviously the history is fascinating. And even just because before the war, right? Because Normandy has a huge place to play in Canadian history too, right? Like most of the French voyages that end up in what is now Quebec start in Normandy. A lot of those people were Normans that came to Canada. My own family background is in Normandy. So yeah, it's fascinating. For all and then the 100 Years' War and all of that. There's tons of stuff to see and do there. Castles all over the place. It's got 30 surviving ish, and there's a keep in Turn. Yeah, it's cool. I went in there ish. I did a video just on that. I don't know if anyone would ever watch it on my channel, but yeah. I think so. I'm going to look it up now. I know places that have transcribed all these war diaries and a place to get second armored brigades and everything. All that good stuff. Yeah. I know I don't. If I had conversational French skills, my life would probably be very different. For all kinds of reasons, I'd be working it's stuff all over my screen. It's bugging me. All over. I would have a probably different life right now if I did. But yeah, it's something I wish I did, but I don't. And my family, my grandparents spoke French. My dad does not at all. I think I speak more French than he does, and it's not much. That's saying something. He grew up in London, Ontario, mostly, and in Northern Ontario, not the French part. So yeah, it's not something I have the ability to do, unfortunately. Yeah. 1628. Yeah, I honestly don't even know when my French side arrived in North America. It's a bit fuzzy. I've never had the time or ability to even pay someone to do it. Hopefully one day, because I have lots of questions, especially on the French side. Growing up in very Anglo London, Ontario, I have lots of questions. Yeah, when is France not unstable in his politics? How many revolutions have they had? How many new? What are they on the Sixth Republic? What are they not unstable? I always think there's always going to be some instability in that country politically. So yeah, any other questions? I can wrap up in a few minutes because I do have to run off. I didn't think I'd have this many, so this is great. Fantastic. Thank you for hanging out with me a little bit, and James for the super sticker, I believe it is, not chat, super sticker. Thank you. I can't see it because I'm using a secondary software, but I'll check it out afterwards. Yeah, so I can do a few announcements real quick. This week coming up, I don't have the book with me on me, but Nate Henley is coming on Thursday evening, Eastern time, so my time. He's coming on to discuss his book on the sinking of the Llandovery Castle. So that is a Canadian hired British ship that's used as a hospital ship to bring Canadians back from England or UK during the First World War. And it's torpedoed in June or May or June, springtime 1918. Is torpedoed just off the coast of Ireland with a huge loss of life, including a large number of Canadian nurses and other members of the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps. So that's going to be a fascinating one. He's been looking at this for a while. So that's coming up on Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern time, as I am in Ottawa. So we're going to be talking about that. And like we were talking about off the hop, I'm going to probably do some digging and see if I can email some people, see if they're willing to come on and talk about a few things. I'd love to get somebody on to talk about Cobra. I would love to get an expert on Cobra on the channel to talk about Operation Cobra and all of that and all that weird. Sorry, all that good stuff. I was looking at James' comment, one of the weird puppet. Yeah, that's not even a real photo. Sorry, I was setting up the live stream. Sorry, this is a bit of story time. So I was setting up the live stream for Nate Henley's appearance, and I'm trying to get the book off of Amazon because I have affiliate marketing through Amazon. And they're selling a fake photo or it's a singing of another hospital ship, potentially. I jumped on here after a bunch of people commented, so I don't know. Of supposedly the Llandovery Castle sinking, which is all kinds of messed up. Because it's not a real photo of the Llandovery Castle. The author, Nate, thinks it's maybe the Llandovery Castle photoshopped poorly to be sinking. It could be another hospital ship that was also torpedoed in the Atlantic, North Atlantic. I can't remember, or is it the Mediterranean? Might have been the Mediterranean. Anyway, we'll talk about all this on Thursday. You can check it out afterwards. But Amazon is selling a fake print photo of this for a lot of money. Anyway, super weird. Thanks, Beer, for hanging out. Everybody else, James, if I'm missing anybody, Great Dominion, thank you. Mike, thank you for coming hanging out, keeping me company for a little bit, and have some good chats. Always love talking about this stuff. And another reason why I do this stuff is to get on and chat with you guys and learn stuff. Like Peter, I want to learn more from you. If you knew Radley Walters and personally, that's fantastic. I mean, I never met him. I never got the chance to meet him. So I'd love to chew your ear at some point or another. But yeah, so everyone, thanks for hanging out for a little bit. I got to run. I got to go take care of my dog. But yeah, so hopefully we can keep doing these maybe semi-regularly. That's a tough word to get out for some reason. That's something maybe I can do. See if I can clear some time in the schedule to just kind of have like, I don't know, AMA, hangout. I don't know what word to call it. Just live stream maybe. I don't know. Because I do enjoy this and learn from you guys, and there's always stuff happening around us and historically or anniversaries or making history, like what happened today with a certain U.S. president. Things are wild all the time. So anyway, thanks again for the support to everybody, for our patrons. If anyone's watching this later and you make it this far afterwards, thank you. Some posts coming up for you guys, but I'll probably have to do that tomorrow. I was going to do them today, but some things came up. Got some stuff I'm working on, and I will get that rest of that Operation Goodwood /Spring /Totalize video hopefully out to patrons and YouTube channel members tomorrow, maybe Tuesday. We'll see, because I want to get that one out for spring. the anniversary of the launching of Spring on the 25th, because this is ground that is not covered much, because the Black Watch stuff gets the attention. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. But everyone, thanks again. Enjoy whatever's ever left of your Sunday and your weekend, and I'll see everybody at least on Thursday. So goodbye, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.